Hi, I'm Eric Linask. We're here in New York at Cloud Expo. I'm talking with Hasib Budani. He's from Soha. Hasib, thanks for joining me.
Of course, thanks for having me.
Who is Soha? What do you do?
Sure, so we provide a service that allows our customers to keep bad guys out and let good guys into their networks, be they in a public cloud or in a private data center.
That is a brilliant and simple explanation. Bad guys out, good guys in. Security obviously has been a key topic, especially around cloud for a while. Why does it continue to be such a huge issue?
I think, there's a number of things going on. Obviously, as you walk around this show here, you're going to find that, there's a lot of hackers out there apparently, right, who are trying to get in and steal information. I think that's a big issue, obviously, continues to be the issue. But I think, even things like the cloud, the great thing about the cloud is that it's very easy to get up new instances up and running, add applications and so on. The bad thing about the cloud is that it's very easy to add applications and instances and get going, which means that sometimes people make mistakes. We're human. When we have big infrastructures, we make mistakes. And making sure that all your infrastructure, application infrastructure, is secured, the perimeter is solid, that's a reasonably hard problem to solve, which is why I think, many times we leave, essentially, sometimes we focus on the front door, but we leave the side door open, and that is why security is such a big problem these days.
Is doing these things, is working in the cloud inherently more or less secure than what you're doing internally or on premises?
No, I don't think so. I think certainly the cloud is new for many organizations. The tools that you need to use to run your infrastructure are different. So certainly, new things lead to us as humans being very conservative about things. We are worried about what it could be. But end of the day, I don't think that's the case. I think the tools are different. I think we need to, understand what those new tools are and start using them. As one example, what we do, the idea is that when you deploy multiple applications across the board, so in Amazon, in Azure, in vCloud, in a data center, every time you deploy applications, what you end up doing is you build a perimeter for each one of these application locations, if you will. And that requires you to buy a number of boxes. You need people to do this. It takes a lot of money, a lot of time, complexity. And what we're saying is, look, as one piece of the puzzle, if you were able to use security as a utility, so you could just consume it as you need it, that reduces your end-to-end workflow. And that's what we do as a business. Our intent is customers should not need to build security as they have done for the last 20 years. They can now consume it as a utility effectively. And that makes your life significantly simpler as an infrastructure and application guy.
How does the DevOps model is becoming much more increasingly popular, the whole continuous deployment scenario. Does that change a security approach or a required security approach?
So actually, I think that's a great question, and here's why. Traditionally, security has been the one thing that's like a speed bump, right? It was designed to slow things down so you could think about it, right, and just kind of reflect on what you're doing. In this day and age, that's very hard to do because the speed with which people do things. Let's say you're building a website, you may be doing 4 updates a day. How are you going to keep security in the loop? It's just impossible. So now security also has to adapt to that model. And there's this notion of security operations now, SecOps. So there's DevOps, now there's SecOps. What these guys are doing is they've figured out that, look, if we don't keep up with the times and speed up to meet the needs for our DevOps teams, they're just going to ignore us. And this happens a lot now, unfortunately. DevOps teams, app teams, they will go deploy something in Amazon. They won't tell anybody about it. That's a terrible way to do business, right? The right way to do this is our security personnel need to keep up with the times. They need to think about automation. They need to think about technologies that allow them to move at the same speed as the rest of the organization. And I really do think that's happening already. And again, as a selfish plug, that's exactly what we do. We're trying to help our security brethren move faster and keep up, basically.
So in the interest of keeping up with having security keep up, is it better to outsource the security procedures?
I mean, I would say it's not so much about outsourcing security. It's more around having think of this as, initially, for many years, what we've done is we bought functions and then we integrate them together in every company. So every company ends up reinventing the wheel. Instead, perhaps, if these functions were pre-integrated, if you will, and I'm obviously generalizing this, it would be better for the company because at the end of the day, they don't manage each function. They manage a workflow. And my point of view is that particularly for security, and if you think about it, in the public cloud in particular, your compute is a utility. Everything is a utility, but security is not. It's not because we're just afraid, right? It's just because we're used to thinking of these things as functions. What we're trying to, get the industry to understand is that there's a way to think of security as a workflow. So instead of you solving one problem at a time, the end of the day, the problem is not that I need to, set up a firewall. That's not the goal. The goal is I need to make sure no bad guys get in, as one simple example. So how do we do that? How do we think of this at an application level, at a network level? I think there are ways to solve that problem now that perhaps did not exist, particularly because of the cloud. I mean, we run our entire service on a number of cloud providers, but we can do this now because there are cloud providers. So it allows us to obviously come up with a brand new way of providing the service to our customers. And really, I mean, we are able to do this because there's a cloud. Our customers are running on the cloud because it's easy for them to do so. Clearly, the next step for our customers, as these are customers already bought our product, is to consume security as a service. They seem to get it. I think a lot of very large enterprises also get it. The way their security teams are growing up, that seems to be the case. I mean, they all are either they're buying security services or they end up building security services in-house. So I think the industry seems to be agreeing on this point, that this should be used as a utility. This should not be as a each function purchased independently and then kind of brought together.
So in that vein, is there an understanding, has the industry started to come to an understanding that you've got to secure your network? You talked about application security. You've also got countless devices and more devices, not only personal devices, but the Internet of Things is growing as well. So as you've got to also integrate new methods for device security, has the industry come to a resolution around how all three of those elements need to be considered together?
Sure. I think there's a lot of challenges, particularly with the devices. Now, the interesting thing to me is, these devices, they could belong to people who work for the company, or they could be customers, or they could be third parties. You don't know. I mean, here's a point of view that we've taken as a company. In order to give access to an application, you should not need access to the network. And that, I mean, it's kind of an obvious statement, but actually that is from a concept perspective, this is not how we do things today. In order for me to give you access to one of our applications, I will first give you access to my network through a VPN or something. And that's where attacks come, by the way. You should not need access to the network. You should only need access to an application. And what we do is basically, instead of exposing the network, we expose an application at a time to sanction users. And if you think about kind of the big attacks that have happened of late, Target, Home Depot, what happened was some good guy lost credentials to one app. Or he had access to one app, and he lost his credentials. A bad guy came in, and because he had credentials from a good guy, got into the network and was able to do a horizontal privilege escalation attack. This happened because the bad guy got access to the network. So if we were to, for a minute, say, well, what if there was a way to not give anybody network access, but only app access? The attack surface goes down from the network to that one dumb application, whatever that happens to be, HVAC or whatever, right? If you were to do that as a first step, we simplify our models. And that's what we are, kind of going out and telling our customers, and that's what it seems to be resonating with our customers. If we reduce your attack surface down to 0 by front-ending your applications, which means no good guy or bad guy can get to your network, only to your apps, that is a significantly better way of doing security than anything we've done in the last 20 years. And that's really how I kind of see security being done. Particularly when you have IoT. Now if you have 1 million devices connecting to your network, you're going to give 1 million devices access to your network. Why would you do this? They need access to one app. Give them access to the app, not to the network. Right? The minute that happens, you'll see the attack surfaces go down, the hacks stop.
Makes a lot of sense. Hopefully the industry is listening to what you're telling them. Haseeb, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.